In today's video, I'm going to give you 6 tips how to keep your audience engaged throughout your presentation. In a previous video, we talked about how to make a great start to a presentation, how to engage your audience at the beginning. But what happens if you have to present for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes or even longer? How can you engage your audience right the way throughout your presentation? Let's jump right in. My name is Alastair McTavish. I'm an internationally certified soft skills trainer. I've delivered training to thousands of people in more than a dozen countries around the world. This channel aims to help you to take your soft skills, communication skills, and leadership skills to the next level. So 6 tips how to keep your audience engaged throughout your presentation. Tip number 1, use persuasive language. So when you're presenting, you need to sell the benefits of why the audience should listen to your content. If you're in a meeting and there are 5 people presenting in 2 hours, very quickly people will decide, shall I listen? Do I need to listen to your presentation? Is it worth listening to your presentation or not? So to keep your audience engaged throughout, you need to use some sorts of persuasive language. Let me give you one of my favorite examples. If you only remember one thing from today's presentation, I hope it's this. If you're only going to take away one thing from today's video, I hope it's this. Use persuasive language when you present. Hopefully that can help to keep your audience engaged, keep them interested, not just at the beginning, not just at the end, but throughout the whole of your presentation. So tip number 1, use persuasive language. Tip number 2, change the tone of your voice. I'm sure you've heard presentations where people speak with a very flat tone of voice. It is extremely boring and they do not change their tone of voice at all. So when you're presenting, be sure to change the tone of your voice. Now, if you are somewhat introverted, you're not used to public speaking, maybe you're quite a quiet person, this might be a challenge for you. So how can we change the tone of your voice? Well, we'll talk more about this in future videos, but just one tip for you here. When you're talking about your hobby, things you love, things you're passionate about, you will naturally speak with a varied tone of voice. So for me, one of my hobbies is table tennis. I've been playing for more than 20 years. When I talk about table tennis, I get very passionate and the tone of my voice changes. So if you're struggling to change your tone of voice when presenting, think about your hobby. And if you need to present on something at school, at work, whatever it might be, try to transmit that same passion into the topic of your presentation. So tip number 2 to keep your audiences engaged is change the tone of your voice. Tip number 3 to keep your audience engaged is use active body language. Well, in a recent video, I've given you several tips how to use gestures to engage your audience in your presentation. I'm just going to give you a few more. So imagine there are 3 different aspects I'm going to talk about, and I'm not just talking to 1 or 2 people, but talking on a big stage to several hundred people, could be at a conference. Well, there are going to be 3 parts to my presentation. Firstly, I'm going to talk to you about why engaging an audience when presenting is important. Secondly, I'm going to give you several tips how to engage an audience and keep them engaged throughout the presentation. And tip number 3, I'm going to give you some tips after this presentation, what you can use, what you can practice, some useful resources. So let's jump right in. So tip number 3, use active body language. Actually, I'll give you one more tip as well. If you are presenting, normally you will naturally have some sort of white screen or TV projector. It could be a TV. Now, one very simple method is just to stand on the left side of the screen or the TV screen, making sure that you're not blocking it, of course. And a few minutes later, you might move over, and now you're standing on the other side of the screen or the TV. You don't want to do this too much, but it just mixes things up, just keeps things a bit more interesting. So tip number 3 to keep your audience engaged in your future presentations or speeches is use active body language. Tip number 4 to keep your audience engaged is interact in some way. At the start of your presentation, you can ask a question, but during the presentation, by all means, ask questions. Now, these could be questions where you're looking for an answer from the audience, or they could be rhetorical questions. So what are rhetorical questions? Rhetorical questions are, that's an example of a rhetorical question I just said there. What are rhetorical questions? I'm not waiting for the audience to answer. I want the audience to think, what does it mean? So if you're sharing some best practice with your colleagues in other departments about a successful project you've worked on, you might say, in this project, we managed to save £2 million in the last year. So how did we manage to achieve that? Let's take a look at this next slide. By saying, how do we manage to achieve that? It's making the audience think, well, how did they do that? And it's making the audience want to listen to what you're going to say next. So tip number 4, interact with your audience. So tip number 5 to keep your audience engaged throughout your presentation is the element of surprise. Now, what do I mean by the element of surprise? Well, it could be anything. When I deliver training, I like people not to sit down too much. Typical training sessions are 7 hours if it's one day. It could be 14 hours if it's 2 days, or even 5 days long sometimes. And if people are sat in their seats for a long time, it's boring, it's dull. People cannot concentrate, cannot focus for that amount of time. So one tip for you is when you have to make a presentation, if you are the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th presenter, you know the audience is a bit tired. You know their energy level is pretty low. Something you can do is say, good morning, everyone. I'm sure you must be feeling quite tired. I'm the final presentation of the day, the last presentation before lunch. Can you all stand up, please? Please stand up and do some stretches for 30 seconds. It could be any crazy stretches, whatever you like, something a bit of fun. Clearly, it depends on the nature of the event. If it's a serious event about health and safety or politics or something like that, then this is not appropriate. But depending on the nature of the audience, something a little bit different, a little bit unexpected is a great way to grab the audience's attention and get them on your side. So this can be done at the start of your presentation, or it can be something done in the middle of your presentation. Tip number 6, the final one to keep your audience engaged, is use the element of surprise. So use the element of surprise. This could be showing a video. It could be showing some sort of picture, some sort of image. It could be getting the audience to write something down. It could be asking a question where you know the audience will say yes. Let me start by asking you a question. Who thinks that presentation skills are important in your career? Please put your hand up. Now, instead of the audience just sitting there, they have to engage. They have to, well, hopefully they will engage. Hopefully they will put their hand up, and it's just something a bit different. So look at other presenters. Look at what TED Talks, watch some TED Talks. See what different presenters do. Try and do something a little bit different, a little bit out of the ordinary. In this way, you've got a lot more chance of engaging your audience at the beginning and keeping that attention all the way up to your conclusion. So I hope you found these 6 tips useful. Just to summarize, tip number 1, to keep your audience engaged throughout your presentation, use persuasive language. Tip number 2, change your tone of voice. Tip number 3, use active body language. Tip number 4, interact with your audience throughout your presentation, not only at the beginning. Tip number 5, use the element of surprise. Do something a little bit different, a little bit unexpected. And finally, tip number 6 is variety is the spice of life. So use different tools, techniques, and tactics to maintain your audience's attention. So I hope you found this video useful, and I'd really like to know which of these 6 tips are you going to try and implement and use in your future presentations. Please share these in the comments. And if there are any other tips I haven't mentioned that you find effective in your presentation, please share these too. If you found this video useful, please give it a like, please subscribe to this channel, turn your notification bell on, and look out for future videos. Thank you for watching.